you can always write to me, to Jerry, and let me introduce Jerry Jung, who is our TA and partner in this course. So Jerry, you could unmute for a second and say hello to everybody.
Hello everybody, I'm a TA of this class. My name is Jerry Jung and I'm also a postdoc at UCSF, so I'm glad to see you guys.
Yeah, great. So two contacts and the website, and you've got the link for Eventbrite. And I just want to tell you about a special session that I hadn't planned initially, but I thought it would be fun to have an investor come and chat with you. And the end of this week, Carl Handelsman, who has two roles, he is with the Roche Venture Fund and also has his own fund, Put on Capital. And he's going to just talk about investing and what he looks for. He is a pure life science investor and has been affiliated with my entrepreneurship classes since the beginning. So that's Carl. So, and please, I've got somebody needs to mute, please. I can hear some background noise. So we are ready to meet tonight's mentor, Caleb Bell, and I'm going to stop my share so we can see Caleb. Caleb, you can unmute. I'm going to introduce you, but it's going to be a quick intro.
Hello.
Caleb, hey, there he is. Caleb has been part of the Entrepreneurship Center at UCSF for years now. He's been mentoring for us for a long time, and it's been great to get to know him. He is currently a venture partner at Beyond Next Ventures, which is a Tokyo-based venture capital firm, though he's here in Silicon Valley. He co-founded an accelerator and a fund in Japan. He has a PhD in biophysical chemistry from Stanford, and he started his own company, Bell Biosystems, when he got out of all his training. So he has a really interesting background in that he has been an entrepreneur since he was 19, but not in life science or healthcare. So I think I'm going to ask Caleb to describe this. And again, if you want to put your questions in chat, we'll cover them at the end. So Caleb, tell us about what you did when you were 19.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with everybody. And Carl is coming up next week. Apparently it's Bald People in Biotech Week for you.
You guys rock.
Yeah, well, the grass doesn't grow on a busy street is what I say. Anyway, yeah, my first entrepreneurial endeavor, I was 19 years old. I was working in the restaurant business. I was a chef. And I started a restaurant with a couple other people that didn't actually go so well. The restaurant failed about a little short of a year after we were open. And I decided to, with that, I should probably go to college and get more than just a high school education. And in college is where I really kind of switched over to biochemistry for my undergrad degrey, and really fell in love with science, and then got the opportunity to come out west for graduate school. At that point, I'd actually founded 3 separate companies. Like you said, none in biotech, but then towards the tail end of my PhD training, got the entrepreneurial itch again. And in 2009, with my brother, co-founded Bell Biosystems.
Before you go there, I just want to go, were your parents chefs or entrepreneurs? Or how did this happen?
No, well, my mother's a corporate attorney. So that definitely helped. She helped with a lot of stuff early on, and also, how to read contracts and think through things, and lawyers for the startup entrepreneur. Your lawyers are part of your team and somebody that you really need to work well with and get good lawyers engaged. So I did have a little family help there.
So you're lucky you don't have to pay $1,000 an hour like people do now.
Still pay pay the money at various places, more get the recommendation and also, some hints on how to just try and keep those billable hours down.
Yeah. So let's go back before we pop into Bell Bio. So you're from Philadelphia. You went to Penn State,
Yep.
and then you moved out west to get your PhD at Stanford. So how did you make this transition into biochemistry from restauranting or whatever you studied as an undergrad?
Yeah, I mean, my initial, my two restaurants had actually failed, and I went to college, and I had started a third company, which was an event production and promotion company. And initially, I was a finance major at Penn State, and I lasted just a couple weeks in my first freshman quarter, and I decided that I wanted something a little more challenging since I was paying for college myself. And I thought biochemistry sounded a little more challenging. So I tried that, and it really took well. I kind of fell in love, and was good. I had some undergraduate publications, did a lot of research, and came out to the West Coast to go into academia to shed all my entrepreneurial feelings, thoughts, genes, but there's something in the weather or the water or the food out here that it's impossible to do that.
So you had a career plan to become faculty someplace? Is that what happened?
I mean, a little bit maybe. I've never had that 20-year plan for my own career. I've kind of taken it as it comes.
So what happened? So you're a biophysical chemist out at Stanford. Tell me, how did you make this transition into starting Bell Bio?
Yeah, well, so it was in the fourth year of my PhD, and kind of had the idea, the aha moment behind Bell Biosystems and what the technology is behind there. We took a magnetic bacteria and we teased it to live inside of stem cells, following kind of the endosymbiotic origin of mitochondria and chloroplasts, but using a magnetic bacteria that would then make that cell magnetic, which then makes those cells show up in an MRI. So for the cell therapy stem cell area, a big challenge after you transplant those cells, where do they go? Are they alive? What are they doing? Essentially the PK/PD readout. If you're doing your studies in mice, no problem. I can put, luciferase in there, or I can, dunk the mouse in liquid nitrogen, slice it up, and scan every slice and tell you exactly where all the cells went. If you want to use a larger animal or a human being, those experiments get a little more challenging to imagine doing. So MRI has no penetration depths, is very safe. So that was what the technology was. But back to your point, I'm wrapping up my PhD. I have this idea. The lab that I was in had none of the ability to do these experiments or see if it would work. I'd never worked with the eukaryotic cell in my life. And trying to figure out how to make this fail faster so that my brain could move on. And went through iterative areas. Do I go do a postdoc? Well, you don't do a postdoc on your idea. You do a postdoc on their idea. So, okay, that's going to take a little longer. And most experiments don't work. So really my goal was, how quickly can I figure out this is wrong so I can get on with my life? And so we thought a startup was the way to do it. And we cobbled together a little bit of money. And I really mean a little bit of money. $50,000 was our first financing, and that lasted us almost a year. 4 people, no salaries, almost a year. Amazing scrappy ways, and we raised that money on no data, although $50K is not that hard to raise. And it turns out it worked. So that set me on the course of 8 years running that company as the CEO.
So you got a little entrepreneurship training support someplace along the way. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and I think I've said this to you before, and I tell this to a bunch of people. You know, an entrepreneur, a true entrepreneur, does not need any individual resource or person or thing to be successful. If you do, if it all relies on one thing, you didn't set up the company right. But most entrepreneurs make use of everything that is around them and all that is available. And the Bay Area has just a cornucopia of resources, of things that you can tap into, tie into, that'll make starting up a company easier. And I've now founded 7 companies, some international, some on the East Coast, and it is easier in Northern California just by the zip code. So yeah, Stanford University had an awful lot of resources there. So I took the Ignite course, which I think is maybe analogous to your course, kind of giving a training what you need to do, what investors are thinking about. And then we also went through StartX, which was a student startup accelerator at Stanford. And then J Labs and QB3. I mean, this area just has a massive amount of resources.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone knows what those are. J Labs is J&J's innovation. How do we describe it? It's
incubator.
It's an incubator, sure. And it's a whole huge effort that's global maybe, but it certainly extends throughout the United States. And StartX Accelerator is Stanford's accelerator and QB3 you mentioned is an organization of 3 UC campuses that has an entrepreneurial focus and some incubator space all over the place. So yeah, we do have amazing resources here, and it helps. So, okay, so now let's go to Bell Bio. You started this company with your brother, Dan, who is 10 years younger. Now, I have 2 kids, and the older kid, and it's only 2-year difference. The older kid basically tried to kill the younger kid for most of his growing up. So how did you manage to start a company with your much younger brother? And yeah, tell us about that.
Well, first off, we had different mothers, so we didn't exactly grow up 100% together. But we've definitely had some times where one of us may have been trying to kill the other one, a lot younger and not after we founded the company. You know, fundamentally, your co-founders, the people that you bring on to at the beginning, what you need more than anything is trust and shared visions, shared goals, and also complementary backgrounds. And my brother and I really had that. He went through business school. We had good trust. He was really great on the finance side of things, and some operations and the details. And I was good with the science and some of the big picture. And we were a really good match. We definitely had some challenges along the way. There was one conversation I know resulted in a fist print in my car as we were driving somewhere.
Do you remember the issue? What was the issue?
No, I don't remember the issue. But it was fun, you know, working with him and doing things with him. And if you're not having fun while you're doing it, why are you doing it?
Yeah. So, okay. So you had passion about this idea, I take it, or you wouldn't have kept doing it. What was good about starting it in the beginning, and what was difficult?
What was good? I really love when people tell me I can't do something personally. And I remember, you know, one of the first ways we tried to get funded was submitting SBIRs. And one of the reviews, the first SBIR we sent got rejected. And one of the reviewers in their critique said, this is, you know, undoubtedly valuable thing, but decades beyond molecular biology and clearly outside of the abilities of such junior and inexperienced researchers.
Jeez.
And that review motivated the heck out of us, our team. And really interestingly, from the time that we submit that first SBIR grant with our 3, experiments we were going to do, to the point where we got that rejection letter, we'd actually done the experiments. We had achieved the phase 1 goals. So we thought this is the perfect scenario where we resubmit, and my letter, I apologize for not including, experiments 1 through 7. Please see these experiments where, what you said was, decades upon molecular biology. Well, here you go. Needless to say, we didn't get the second one funded. We did eventually, a year or so later, we got some SBIR funding, and we actually got an RO1 as well. But I just love the early stage. I love doing things that people think are impossible, or you don't have enough capital, you don't have the resources to do it. And that's just incredibly motivating for me.
You sound like an entrepreneur. I guess. So tell us about some of the things you learned. You were at Bell Bio for 8 years, and as the founder's CEO. What was it like? What are some of the learnings? What would you do differently, knowing now what you know? And lessons learned.
Yeah. Well, one thing, and this ties back to being an entrepreneur, a little bit of the earlier comment, if you go out with your idea and you start talking to people, and there isn't a respectable percentage of people that look at you like you're crazy, you might not have a truly innovative thing, because innovation by definition comes in the face of conventional wisdom, right? It is a break of conventional wisdom. So when you go shop that around and start talking to people, if you're not getting some percentage that are like, there's zero chance this will work, this is crazy, you may not be as innovative as you think, or you may not be addressing a problem that's really big in the market.
So if people think you're crazy because you're so innovative, how are you raising money?
Yeah, you got to find the right people. You got to find VCs, people that can see that. It depends who you're talking to. But the point of what to learn is you got to have thick skin, right? You got to be able to take no, or take feedback, or have somebody punch you in the gut, and then you ask, well, what would make you invest, or and keep that persistence. The single and what I've seen now, being on the investor side now for 3-4 years, in my career, persistence is one of the keys to success.
So does that mean if people say, go away, you're too early, you're too this, you're too that, you come back at them?
You can, and although a lot of VCs, it's really a stock question. They'll say too early, not a fit. That may be that it's a real no, but it could be a comeback. So one of the things to ask is follow up is, well, what would make you invest? What are the things you would want to see? And investors don't really invest in a point. They invest in a trajectory. It's not like you're going to ever have one meeting with an investor, hello, and walk out with $1 million. That's not how it works. You have the first meeting, and then you have another meeting 3-6 months later, and investors, and now that I'm on that side of the table, we're tracking your progress. We're seeing what happens over that time. And if every 3 months where we meet, the story is exactly the same, that's not a trajectory that an investor wants to invest in. If I meet with you 3 weeks, 3 months later, and you're way ahead of where I thought you would have been, that's now starting to look like an investable story. So it's going to take more than one meeting and trying to understand what investors want. And everybody cares about fundraising. And I've raised, money in 7 companies for 20 years. Fundamentally, conceptually, fundraising is really simple. You give them what they want, and they will give you the money. It really is that easy. The challenge is figuring out what they want. And a good business plan, a financial, path, this thing that we're going to be a unicorn or a blockbuster, that's not what they really want. That's not what we really want. That's what every pitch deck I look at looks like. Nobody comes up with, this company is going to be horrible, would you invest in it? They all come looking like we could be the next unicorn. But that doesn't get you, that gets you the meeting, that doesn't get you the investment.
So I can't stand the suspense. What do they really want?
It depends who they are. So now you've got it, is this a venture capital investor, or is this an angel investor? Is this a corporate investor? And different investors are different things. For example, angel investors, that's coming out of my pocket. That is my money. I have to speak with my significant other and get an okay to release that, right? The dynamic there is different than a VC, right? Where VC is coming out of a fund. And so if for angel money, they have some sort of, it's more heartstrings. You're going after a disease indication that their family's affiliated with. They see something in you, you remind them of them when they were younger. They're experts in this field, and they like the connection and want to be a mentor and an advisor for you. So it's hitting those heartstrings. For the VC, they're not really investing their own money, right? I mean, maybe the general partner is putting in 5% of the total fund, but 90%, 95% of that is coming from LPs. So it's not the same, heart, hey, this is coming out of my wallet. It's more, if this goes off the rails and I go back to the LPs, I can say, hey, at the time, we did everything. It looked all great, but a year, 2, 3 years, this happened, that happened. But at the time, all boxes were checked and it looked like a big win. Corporate venture capital, most of these people don't care about the finance side of it. Does this technology product or team solve a problem for our company or match with a strategic initiative that we have? So really figuring out what they want is a critical step to getting to an actual investment. And just having, we're going to be a blockbuster drug, or we're going to be a unicorn company, that gets you a seat at the table. That doesn't get you the check.
Yeah. How about friends and family?
Yeah, well, the FFF round, and you know what the third F stands for in the FFF round?
I do, but maybe the audience doesn't.
Anybody in the audience? Friends, family, and fools. Yeah, somebody put it in there.
Yeah. Getting it in the chat. Yep.
That money coming in is insanity money, right? I mean, it's and there's something else coming. So with Bell Biosystems, one of the first investors was my PhD advisor. He had worked with me. I was the first person that came through his lab that had any entrepreneurial desire at all. And he and his wife put in, a couple, it's a small tens of thousands. And that was, he likes to see his students go off and do whatever things. And that was what he was doing to help me. And whether he was going to make money off of it or not was not at all the reason that investment went through. So it's different things. So families just trying to support family. I would, and having had a couple companies and various family invest in some of them, you've got to be very careful about that. And you need to be open and transparent with them and everybody that, hey, this is risky. This could be lost. Don't give me a check that you can't afford to lose.
Yeah, it's hard when you have to face them at Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've raised all kinds of money as a CEO of Bell. Maybe relate some of your experience about what that was like and how long it took and what the expectations were and so on.
Yeah, it almost always takes longer than you hope. Or than you're planning for. And part of that is by design, because investors know the closer you get to dry well, the more leverage they have. So, we purposely try and drag it out a little bit. Back to a question you had earlier, what are some lessons learned and what can people do? One of the best things you can do as CEO of a company is have options, is have optionality. Don't have all your eggs in any one single basket. As you're talking to venture capital, have a dozen of those conversations going on, and have, we always had grant funding working in the background, and have alternatives, because there's no guarantees down any one of them. And it's better to, have them pop up and then make a decision of what you think is best. And I recommend that in your staffing, in your partners, and in everywhere you can possibly create some optionality, you're lowering risk.
Yeah. So you started, Bill, you had just been, aside from the restaurants and the events business, you have basically been in school, and then you were doing an academic career, and then all of a sudden you find you're CEO founder of a company. What sorts of challenges were there? Team challenges? How did you learn how to manage people, and how did you learn how to do the business side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd managed people before. I spent 12 years in the restaurant business before going to grad school, and I'd run teams there. And the event production promotion company, that at its height was a 100-person company, and we raised money there. So I'd managed people before. Managing scientists was a little different, and that became a challenge. And there's two interesting stories that I can tell you on that. I'll give you one. At one point, we were hiring a chief scientific officer, and this guy, fantastic guy, Brad Rice. He was a top level executive at PerkinElmer before, and he had been on the other side of the table evaluating our technology, and then he became free, and we really wanted to do something, and we were interviewing. Everything's great. Well, PerkinElmer is a public company, so I can go look up his salary, and I can see that last year, and at this point Bell Biosystems was 15 people. I can see that last year he made about 50% of what our entire spend was. Right? So how the heck are we going to hire him? Right? How is that, negotiation? We can't even get to the ballpark of his salary. So what we did, he liked us, we liked him. And a lot of times people like that, when they're looking at a startup, it's not all for the money. They're there for different reasons. And he had his first IPO, while I was still in elementary school. How am I going to manage that person? It was interesting how we got him on board. We're coming to the salary thing, and what we did is we just opened the books, and we said, here is our next 18 months of runway, which is the funding that we have. This cell right here is where you put your salary. You fill that cell in for what you need to make, and you can see what I make, you can see what everybody else makes. You're the chief scientific officer, you're going to get to spend the money and drive it. What I'd like you to draw your attention to, this other cell right here tells you when we go bankrupt. The bigger number that you put in that cell for your salary means the faster we go bankrupt. And the other thing is, the higher your number is, the lower our equity offer is going to be. So fill it in. And he actually came back with a number that was a lot lower than what we were initially anticipating. And it was because, he really liked the challenge. He wanted the strong equity position. And he'd been through, at that point, I think he'd been through 2 IPOs and an M&A in his career. So he was not, it was not the people that are in the mid stage where they really, really need to be earning to put kids through college or, grow that wealth. And then managing him, I just got out of the way.
Very clever technique to get a number out of them. That's one for the books. That's really good. Yeah. So what, is this the guy that you brought in as CEO?
No, that was a couple years later. We had proven the technology worked in primates. We had developed a product. We had some repeat customers, and the next stage of the company was going to be to start some regulatory filings and really grow the commercial side of things, EBITDA focused. I'm an early stage guy. I'm an early stage person. I like that stage. So I was not going to be the right person for that next chapter in Bell Bio's development. And I was also still the largest shareholder at that point. So we started a process and we brought in a different guy. Ken Harris was his name, an ex-executive from Paul.
Okay. And how did that go with him, and what's happened with the company?
To be honest, it hasn't gone so well. So I left in 3 going on 4 years ago. He took over, and then maybe about 8 months ago, I got notice of the bankruptcy. So I don't believe he was able to close any additional funds after he took over. And as everybody knows in biotech, I mean, if there's no money, you're kind of done. Little bittersweet. The same week I got the notice of the bankruptcy, one of our early users sent me notice that their publication demonstrating the technology in primates was coming out. Oh. So, hey, it works in primates. It works.
Cool.
It was finally published, and your shares are worth nothing.
Wow. Well, it's a biotech story, right?
Yeah, I mean that's how they go.
Yeah.
Hindsight is 2020. So we, obviously that transition was not done properly, or we could have done better. I mean, well, you don't know. Maybe somebody else would have had the same result. There's no alternative universe.
Yeah. So great. So super interesting story. I want to make sure we have time to get to people's questions. Just to talk for a minute about mentorship, why you mentor, what you hope people are going to get out of interacting with you.
Yeah. So why I mentor is really, really easy. I have benefited so much from so many amazing mentors that have really, shaped my path, trajectory, and helped me. There is no way that I will be able to pay those people back for all they have done for me. So I'm not going to try. I'll just try and pay it forward and help someone else a little bit. I like the early stage. It is fun stuff to me. I enjoy it. And it's exciting. And you also, I think when you're on both sides of a table, you become better yourself. It's a fantastic. The mentor-mentee relationship is just fantastic. And if you want to do big things in life, I think you need to be on both sides of that.
So we're so fortunate in Silicon Valley. People think the way you do, and this pay it forward is just part of the ethos here. It's what we all do, and it's wonderful that you're volunteering your time in the way that you do and connect with people who really need. I mean, you have so many years of experience, and good, bad, or indifferent, you've learned as you went along, and to be able to share that is really awesome.
Yeah, happy to. I saw a question come in from the chat that asked about, did I protect my IP and how?
Please, yeah. Let's start taking questions from chat.
Absolutely. You protect it, and you get good lawyers. After the aha moment, the next person I spoke to was a lawyer. As I mentioned at the beginning, you need good lawyers. They really need to help you. And IP, this is biotech. Your patent is your product in many cases, in many respects. There are only a few companies that will end up, actually taking their products to market. Most of them, you're looking at an M&A, an exit, where one of the big players, somebody's going to take you out along the way. and that will be done on your patent family, your IP estate. How do you protect it? There's tons of strategies, and it really depends upon your specific technology and the rest of the market place. But you got to really think through that and find some resources and people to help you navigate through that, especially if you're going at it your first time. Because, in Silicon Valley, there's all these sayings, move fast and break stuff, or, learn from your mistakes and all that. And you should absolutely do that. But you only get one shot for the patent. That is not an area that you can mess up. So you want to tap into some advisors, mentors, and good lawyers.
So there are a lot of people from UCSF on the chat, and so I'll just mention to them that UCSF has an Office of Technology Management that's in my group, Innovation Ventures, and that's exactly who you go to in the beginning. You go trot down there and say, I'm working on something and I need you guys to know about it, and please advise me. So that's an easy route, and it's free of charge, except that, of course, UC owns your IP. So,
yeah, and I was a grad student at Stanford, and we did not file through Stanford.
Really?
Filed independently. There are multiple paths to take, but you really need somebody to help you out. You don't want to mess up at the beginning.
Yeah, great. I'm glad. Okay, so please add your questions to the chat. I see one from Bernard Fallon, from my colleague from Bio. And his question is, Bernie, would you like to unmute and you can ask the question?
Sure. Good to be with you today, Stephanie and Caleb. Good to speak with you again. Early on in this session, Stephanie mentioned how you've been active in deal making in Japan. Could you say how your experience since Bell Biosystems and working internationally has changed how you either approach other investors or how you look at startups in any way? What have you learned from that cross-border experience?
Yeah, we did, at Bell, we did some stuff with companies in Israel, Japan, China, Europe. We did take an international view on things. We're in cell and gene therapy, and you kind of have to. I think those things have helped. International perspectives or diverse perspectives in any way, shape, or form, I think add value a lot. And so really learning from that. The Japanese are unique. There are some unique business practices and customs and stuff, and it took me a little while to get to know those, but that has also led me to the venture fund I work at now, and I've also worked for a couple other Japanese entities in the last couple of years. So it's even though I'm no longer with Bell Biosystems, the relationships that were forged from making some of those deals are still, I'm working with some of those people again now in just different avenues and different ways.
So it's a small world after all.
It is a really small world after all. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Caleb, for sharing that.
Thanks for the question. We have a question from Mohsen. Mohsen, would you like to ask it directly, or would you like me to read it? If you'd like to ask it directly, just pop on to. Okay.
I can read the question. At the company, we actually did have revenue, a dribble of revenue, not much at all. We had a couple small, like under 100K deals. And then we had a preclinical research use product. But ultimately, the question is not naive. Most biotech companies do not have revenue. And you can go as long as you can continue to raise funds. And there are some biotech companies that are 10, 15 years on with no revenue. But you need to be able to have a solid story to keep raising that funding.
Yeah, and keep in mind, there's also government grants are available to us here in the US, the SBIRs that Caleb mentioned, Small Business Innovation Research Grants, are a very well-trodden path to funding early stage biotech. And I don't know if we have anybody here from Asia or any place else, but of course, in other countries, there are grant availability as well, funding sources. Let's take Deborah's question next. Hi, Deborah. Hi, you want to tell us?
I'm just curious about, so you got $50,000
Yep.
and all the expenses. So did that go mostly to the IP, to the lawyers?
Interestingly, most of the money went to United and American Airlines. So what we did, nobody was taking any money salary wise. We got our IP attorneys to file the patent for equity, and I needed to actually do the experiments, and we found 3 labs that combined had the equipment and the resources that we needed to try and do the proof of concept. The challenge was, one was in California, one was in Pennsylvania, and one was in Bar Harbor, Maine. So for the first year, we flew around from place to place to place doing the experiments. So
these were all you were all affiliated with those universities, right?
It was
to work in the labs. Or?
It was there's a famous saying: most great companies start with a crime. We were not doing anything criminal. No. But it was a friend's startup in California that had some of the resources that let me come through the side door. It was my undergrad research advisor that let me back into his lab to play around with some stuff, and then it was a contact that I had that let me in the 3rd lab in Maine. So it is the scrappy, let's find a way to do it with no money. And the funny thing is, at that stage when I'm talking to people saying, I have no cash, I have no money, I can't give you anything but, equity or whatever, it was easier to get things than after we'd closed our $2 million seed round, and now we had a little bit of money. And then everybody wants their ounce of flesh, and it got a little harder to do things.
Yeah. So can I ask one more? So after you got that money and then you needed a place, like what city, did you choose one city for all of you to be having lab space and all the equipment you needed, or what did you do?
Yeah, so we were, the four of us, well, my brother was still actually living in Philadelphia, but he wasn't a scientist. I was fine. The other 2 scientists, one was coming from Berkeley and the other was coming from Stanford. And their spouses were the ones that helped us lift it up. I mean, you don't think about that money, but all of us went for, something like 12, 18 months without a salary. Their living is coming from somewhere. and it was the spouses that really helped us, step it up. But we moved into incubator facility in the Bay Area after that.
Thank you.
Great. I think Raphael's ready to ask his question. Go ahead, Raphael.
Oh, hello, Caleb. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. So you spoke about the importance of IP. When I first had my idea, after an MIT surgical hackathon was presented, filed a provisional patent. That has since expired because we haven't gotten to the point where we've refined the science enough, and still doing research.
Did it publish?
No, provisional patent expired. Nothing was published.
So you can, the easiest strategy, you can just refile the provisional.
Okay.
One thing that I did early on, because there's this chicken and an egg problem, right? You want the patent on file. I need to convert it in 12 months, but I need to raise money and then do the experiments, and I can't guarantee that that's going to happen in 12 months. How do you solve that riddle, right? What you can do is you can refile at 1 month, 3 months, whatever. You can iteratively refile that provisional patent. if you make no changes to it, at least when I was doing this, which is over a decade ago, it was like $400 each refile, just the filing fees. If you add a little, it might get more. But then, you know, when I finally get the money and get the experiment and enable and want to convert from that provisional to a utility patent or the, you know, design or whatever the patent is, I just look back at what's the earliest provisional that has not expired, and you can touch back. And that's an interesting strategy when you're cash strapped and you're worried about how do you get moving from the beginning. You can use.
Okay, thank you. That's a great recommendation. Thanks.
And Neil, do you want to ask your question?
So there's a question that came in privately to me from somebody, REM, too, by the way. That I don't.
That was directed to you, Caleb, privately rather than to the universe.
Okay. Well, then at the end, I'll respond to you.
Okay.
In it.
You could just repeat the question, perhaps, or I can repeat the question.
Why don't you repeat it? And
okay.
sorry.
So I wrote to you. Do you have in your mind a clear conceptualization of the different phases of the entrepreneurship process?
I do.
If so, part B, what is one of the most striking things that can make the entrepreneurship process go wrong?
Yeah. Okay, two-part question. For the first part, I do, and I'm stealing somebody else's conceptualization, but it makes a lot of sense. Startups go through 3 phases: jungle, dirt road, and paved highway, right? In the jungle, you're just surrounded by bush. You don't really know where you're going. You're hacking your way out. You're navigating at the same time, and you got to figure it out. At some point, you get to a dirt road where you've proven a little bit. Now, we have a car, we've got a driver, we kind of know where we're going, but the road is bumpy. And at some point, we're going to get stuck in a ditch. And you know what? Everybody in the car, you got to jump out and start pushing. And we're going to get dirt and mud in our face when we do it. And then the paved highway, at some point, you really get to the point we have product market fit. We know where we're going. And if you get stuck, nobody gets out of the bus. We call AAA, they come in, they fix the tire, we keep moving. And there's some books on this. And one of the big things, different horses for different courses. Make sure you get the right people that are matched with the right stage. And I've had that wrong a couple times. One, we were in the dirt road and we hired this guy, great resume, but he was more of a paved highway thing. And we got into, we hit the ditch, we're stuck, and he's trying to dial up, AAA to have them come out and replace the tire. Whereas everybody else has already jumped out of the car and started pushing, right? And it was just a little bit of a mismatch with him, and not because anything wrong with him, but just the stage of the company. So to your second question, what can go wrong? The single most valuable thing that any startup has, in my opinion, are the people. The people are the ones that do everything and make everything work. And really, if I'm CEO, I'm not the one doing anything. I'm just pointing, this is the direction and keeping the lights on. It's everybody else that's actually doing the hard work. Make sure you get the right people that are matched with the stage, motivate them properly, and make sure they have the resources they need to do what they need to do.
By the way, a brief response to the first part of your 2-part answer with the 3 stages: the jungle, what was phase 2, the bumpy road?
Dirt road,
and then the highway. I couldn't help but think of the old book, I'm Okay, You're Okay, where they distinguish between parent, adult, and child. And the way relationships can go wrong is if you're mismatching the adult with the child, et cetera, et cetera. You see the analogy there.
Same thing.
So yeah, the key concept there is the concept of fit, right? Between the resources and the opportunities, I suppose.
And the people.
The people.
I think it's also a culture. I mean, some of what you're addressing is
Yeah.
you bring in a big company guy to a startup culture and it may or may not work.
Yeah, it's not a good fit in a certain sense.
Depends upon the person. Are they going to roll up their sleeves?
Right.
Could be fine. If they want to call AAA to come fix every problem and need a team of executive assistants to make sure they make it to a meeting, not going to work out.
Yeah.
But one final little quick pushback there on your second one, when you said understandably and persuasively, it's a matter of the people resources that you have available and how you relate to them and manage them and such and so. But can you identify any non-obvious ways in which the entrepreneur can either behave or make decisions that are flawed in some way, which can, other than by not hiring high quality people who are not linked up to the appropriate phase, that can lead to an unhappy outcome?
Yeah.
I'm giving an example. For example, where you exaggerate the prospects of the product, where you overpromise something, where you mislead people you're trying to recruit. I mean, there are all sorts of ways in which
misleading people
misconduct
is always misleading, and Theranos is the case in point. But frankly, I think probably most of the decisions I've made have been flawed in some way, shape, or form. You make a decision in the absence of knowledge, right? If I have full knowledge or know everything, I don't need to make a decision. It's that the path is obvious, right? You only make decisions in places where the path is not obvious, the information is incomplete, and you have to choose and guess. And a lot of times they're flawed. I would say most of them are flawed. The thing is, how can I, if I'm wrong, how can I recover? And if the decision is like A or B and they don't really matter, you know what? I just pick one and move on. But if it's A or B and B would tank the company, I think a lot more about that one. But what you need to do, and I used to be a sailor. I used to race, and running a company to me is a lot like a regatta. When we start the race, we have a plan. We have inked our plan. That plan will not get me to victory. I guarantee it, because there's other boats in the race, and the wind changes while we're out there. Mm-hmm. This is very much like the startup opportunity. So what you as the skipper of the ship or the leader of the company need to do, you need to be keeping your team laser focused on the current tack, on the current objectives. But you're looking around and seeing, is there other wind? What are other people doing? Mm-hmm. And at some point you need to move, you need to pivot, you need to make a tack. Right. When you make that decision, you need to make that decision, and you tack and you move. And the plan was the plan up until the point that you change the plan. And then when you change the plan, that new plan is the plan. And being decisive, and making sure that you keep your team rowing in the right direction, and headed the right way, or that way. Decisions are still going to be flawed. They're going to have errors in them, but you will recover from them. Mm-hmm. The challenge, that the place that is really, really troubling is if you end up having, some people still on the previous tack, they didn't really make the turn, and the other people are turning a third way. When you have that, that's a recipe for destruction.
Let's thanks for that answer, and that this is why we don't write 20-page business plans anymore, because they're useless. So Anil, let's go to your question.
So you talked about the getting from the jungle to the dirt road to the highway. You certainly need a different driver who can drive on the highway versus the one on the dirt road. I think that makes sense. But what are the people who were driving before in the previous scenario, and they were vital at that time, and many of them probably were very close to you or were crucial for you to get out of that And if they are just employees, maybe you can ask them to leave. But what if they were your mentors or very close to you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And thank you for the question. And this is, my time at Bell Biosystems, two of my most challenging times there were where the company had moved. The company had moved from jungle to dirt road. And a person that we had leading the lab in the jungle portion was an amazing scientist, very innovative, great. But as we're starting to get SOPs in place, as we need to have partners coming in and talking with them, observing, and the path that we were going, it was not the right fit. And you as the founder CEO, you need to figure that out, and you need to have that tough conversation. And it was a very tough conversation for me, because, and I've employed hundreds of people, and in the restaurant business, you come in and, hey, you stole from us last night, so you're terminated today. That's easy. That's an easy conversation to have. The company's now at a place in a direction that doesn't match with your skill set, but you were really great for the last place. That's a lot harder. And that was very hard. And I had to have that conversation with him. And I eventually had to also ask my PhD advisor / first investor to resign from our board. That was also a difficult conversation to have. But a necessary one, because, if you have this guy with machetes tied to his hands and feet getting in the bus, while you're on the paved road, that's not going to work out. It's not going to work out for anybody involved. And you as the CEO need to do that and need to make those tough decisions. And there will be tough days.
I think if you're talking about an advisor, an actually formal advisor, as opposed to just a mentor who's helping out, those agreements are usually structured for a 2-year period. And after the 2 years, you can just say, hey, we're at a different phase now. Wonderful help that you've been able to give us, but it's not what we need going forward, or whatever. But things are arranged that way for a purpose. So.
And I wish I had taken your course and known to put the not have lifetime appointments in my boards at the beginning. We learned that lesson midway, but that is really good advice. Unfortunately, we didn't do that when we stood Bell Bio up originally.
Oh, well, we should have known each other earlier. Mohsen has a question about, and I know his mic isn't working, so I'll read it. Does an idea that is not patentable have any potential?
Oh, absolutely. The recipe for Coca-Cola is not patentable or not patented.
But in our world, biology, etc.
And I'm in cell therapy, and a lot of that has to do with the manufacturing process, the picking process. Intellectual property. People think patent. But there's also copyright, trade secret, know-how, and there are a lot of ways and a lot of things that you can do to commercialize and not patent it. You need to match your intellectual property with the business that you're growing and building. If it's a small molecule drug, yeah, it's your patent estate. If it's a cell and gene therapy, some of those are, some genetic sequences won't be patentable at all. So it may be your process or your speed to market or something else that you're going to use to create a barrier to entry to others. Fundamentally, what you need to do is just create a barrier for competition, and patents are the obvious one, but they're not the only one.
We have a terrific IP attorney who's going to be giving us a lecture on the different types of IP, and it's an opportunity to ask him these kinds of questions as well. Great. And Raphael, you had another question?
Yeah, so Caleb, you mentioned that your SBIR first application, I think I heard that even your second application were not approved. besides having included that sort of missing research, was there anything else that you would have done differently that would have improved the chance of approval success on that first recipient?
And I don't think the third one was approved either, or the fourth one, but at the end of the day, Bell Bio got about $4.5 million in NIH funding across a couple SBIRs and an RO1. And what changed, for better or worse, this is how it is, we added an academic co-PI, and then poof, we got funded.
Wow.
So then from that point on, we did all of our grant applications with an academic co-PI.
So who was the PI originally?
Me.
Okay.
And I went from, grad student to biotech CEO. No postdoc, no whatever, but yeah, I was unproven. And so, our innovation scores may be good, but execution, the old boys club was not working for me. So we added an academic co-PI.
So as a follow-up question to that, I'm a business and strategy guy. I'm not a scientist, so I have to go out and find a chief scientific officer. I guess I need to do that before even attempting to apply for an SBIR1.
Oh yeah, they're gonna, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you read the instructions, they'll say it won't be needed, but that's just not the reality of grantsmanship and the review process. It is an old boys network, unfortunately.
Where are the best places to go find entrepreneurial minded or interested postdocs, I guess, right?
Well, there are probably a lot of them on the call right now. So, read the chats, who they are, and being in this class will help you. We also have a lot of SBIR expertise as a group. Errol Arkulik, who's delivering the first lecture in class, was a program director at NSF for the SBIR program. And I am an NIH SBIR reviewer. And there are lots of other ands. So if people are interested in SBIR grants, that's a topic we could take up separately. Okay, oh, I see an entrepreneurial postdoc. I love it. Hi, Gordon, David. Okay, Ashley has a question, and I can read it if she doesn't want to. Is there anything you'd have done differently when looking at incubators? You mentioned a couple. I wonder, were any in the Bay Area that were the best fit?
I mean, that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, but you did mention about like 3. I think you mentioned like QB3 and then a couple other incubators. In terms of like best fit, I guess like looking back, you're like, I had the least regrets about this one, or maybe even like some challenges about some that looking back probably like was helpful for you.
There was one we had a really big challenge of. We moved in and we moved out 3 months later. I'm not going to name it.
Okay.
But all of the other ones, I will name these: QB3, J Labs, StartX, Bonneville Labs, NBC Bio Labs. We went through all of those. I have no regrets for any of them.
Okay.
What you need to do is you need to match whatever the needs of your startup or company are at the time, and make sure that it fits. So the ones that we went into, didn't take equity or didn't take much, but we were able to pay rent because we were funded at the times that we did that. There's some other ones, Indie Bio and Y Combinator that's doing bio now, that if you don't have any funding, they will take equity and give you a little bit of funding and give you lab space. So you got to just, what does your company need? And then find the incubator accelerator that provides that. Do you need some fancy special equipment? Do you need GMP? Do you need BSL-2? Do you need, lots of questions, or BSL-3? You got to figure out what matches with your needs and those. And we looked at different ones at different times. Before we had our own equipment, we looked at some that had more equipment and stuff that we could leverage. But then later, we needed to get, because we're selling product, we needed to get up to GMP. and there's only a few that have the capacity to be GMP compliant. So it kind of changed as the company evolved. No regrets for any of them, except for the one I'm not going to mention. And they all served the purpose at the time that we needed them. All great. I would recommend them all.
Thank you.
Two different categories, accelerators and incubators. An accelerator has some sort of a program that you go through, typically will give you some money, usually in return for equity, but if it's a university-based accelerator, maybe not, maybe they'll just contribute it to you. And well, in the old days, we used to like the fact that there was co-working space, but that's no longer really important these days. And anyway, that's an accelerator. An incubator, you have to pay rent. And so you have to have some money or you can't join them. And they have a less structured program, but it's a great peer group for many of the ones around the Bay Area. So a little background there. Srikanth, since you went from grad student to biotech CEO at one stroke and didn't have exposure to leadership, strategy, et cetera, who did you use as your sounding board?
I mean, I used a lot of people as a sounding board. I had some exposure. I probably had about 8 years of running companies under my belt before then, but they were in different sectors. But there's a lot of parallels. Running a kitchen and running a lab are similar. You get perishable materials that come in. You use, interesting equipment and trained personnel, completely different level of training, but, ostensibly there's no difference between an autoclave and a steamer. When you go get your reagents out of the deli fridge in the lab, where do you think they got the deli fridge from? And I actually equipped our first lab from a restaurant supply store rather than a, second biotech thing. And you get the same equipment for a quarter of the price. There's a tip for all you people. Look at restaurant supply stores, your lab benches, your fridges, all of those things, way cheaper. Literally the same product.
Wow.
You can get liquid nitrogen from a restaurant supply store, a lot cheaper than from Praxair. And then I'd managed a event production and promotion company, and that was a big marketing and sales education, and that actually helped me a lot. As founder CEO, really 99% of what you're doing is sales or marketing. You've got to sell your team on the vision. You've got to sell investors on the opportunity. You've got to sell advisors on the potential. I mean, you are marketing all the time. It's chief evangelist, chief enthusiast, chief everything else ist, that you have to fill in the gap. So I actually think, my experience in restaurant business and event business really helped me for moving into biotech. I don't know if I actually answered your question.
Yeah, so my point was basically like you went from grad student to biotech CEO, and all of a sudden now you're handling the science, you're handling the finances, you're handling people, you're talking to investors, you're a psychologist, a motivational speaker, you're doing so many things, right? So you're obviously stretched thin. At the end of the day, when you feel like things are not going wrong, obviously it's not something you can ventilate in front of your team. There's somebody else in the back that you need to go and check out and do your therapy sessions, right? So how are you doing that? Who was willing to listen to all your woes and advise you?
I understand your point now. And yeah, I was very lucky to have some really good mentors. And one of my mentors is a gentleman named Klaus Hambuchen. He was the retired CEO of Siemens Healthcare. He had that role for 30, 40 years. And because our technology was MRI based and he knew MRI and he was in the area, we really meshed well. I met with him. We had lunch every other week for 8 months as we were getting things up, and that relationship is one of the reasons why I mentor through various avenues today, because I got so much value from that. But you are right. The CEO, the founder, you need somebody. You need somebody who's not your investor, not your formal advisor. And the one really good thing about being in the Bay Area is there are tons of these people that you can find that will pay it forward, that will sit there and be that sounding board. Because you're right, you do need that. Also my partner, also my family, also my dog, I mean, use what you got.
There's a couple of thoughts here. There are a number of founders groups around, at least around Silicon Valley. At one point we had one, and it's just sort of an open environment where if you're invited in, you can speak confidentially to other founders who probably have the same problems that you're having. And it's very helpful as a support group. And the second thought is there is at least one psychiatrist I know who's UCSF affiliated, who specializes in entrepreneurs. And yeah, because, it is difficult, it is stressful, and entrepreneurs are really in many ways alone because they're the ones who have to put it all together. So that's his practice. And I'm sure there's more than one. I happen to know this one, and there's some very interesting thoughts about it all. So yeah, you're right. It's a good question. So,
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. So we're actually coming close to an hour and a half, which is lovely. And I'm happy to stay on if Caleb is, but if anyone feels a need.
I have to leave at the top of the hour.
Oh, okay. Well, that gives you 6 more minutes. So any last question for Caleb? Maybe they're all questioned out, Caleb.
I saw a hand go up somewhere. Maybe
I can't see hands, so I'm not looking in the right place. But if there's anyone else with a question, please do.
I have a question.
Yeah, Deborah.
Caleb, do you always have a few ideas going? Are you one of these kind of people, or do you like get one idea and then work on that company, or in the back of your mind, do you have other things that would be good for a different company or different group of people? Just curious.
I have a lot of bad ideas.
Bad ideas?
I have a lot of bad ideas. I do. And I try and run them to ground pretty quick. One of the things that I actually really love now that I'm working on the investor side of the table is that I get to work with so many amazing teams and kind of think about this thing and then that thing and kind of dart a little more over things. So I do really enjoy that. But I do also miss, for 20 years, I was basically an entrepreneur. I do miss the really driving it forward and seeing it to fruition. Whereas now I just kind of fly in and, hey, here's some thoughts, here's some blah, blah, blah. And then they do all the hard work. So it's pros and cons.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question is if you had to pick one side, which one would it be?
Do I have to pick? I mean, it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other.
Different perspectives, right? We as entrepreneurs all think you get investor guys are all powerful. And we're just out here begging for money. So so enjoy your power stance right now in your new gig.
There's no power. We're still begging for money too.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Caleb. It's fascinating discussion and great amounts of wisdom. Thank you for sharing it with us. And you volunteered. Do you remember which peer forums you volunteered for?
I don't remember which ones I did.
Was it region or expertise sector?
I think both. I volunteered for a couple of them. We could
Great.
look it up and find it, but I
That's
don't.
okay, fine. Yeah, so So you'll be able to see Caleb again by joining one of his sessions in the peer forum. And I just want to remind everyone that we're going to do one last one of these with Carl Handelsman, who's quite a well-known investor in Silicon Valley circles, on Friday night. So hope to see most of you there as well. I apologize for the Friday night, but it's the only available time. And I look forward to having you all in class. Don't forget to sign up or you're going to be missing out. So thank you again, and good night or morning, wherever you're dialed in from. So thank you, Caleb.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you, Caleb.
opportunity.
Thank you so much.
I just found
Thank
that
you.
Caleb is in the digital house.
Oh, digital health. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And I'm
All
gonna
right.
put the Eventbrite link in the chat. So yeah, feel free to click it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. And Caleb needs to go, but I'm happy to sit on this for a while longer. I don't have anything I have to do tonight besides walk my dog, so I'm good. I can stay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Caleb. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Anyone want to chat? Just let me know. Bernie, thanks for being here.
Yeah, Stephanie, it's Raphael. What do you find is the most effective way to get access to some of the mentors in the program? Just connect with them on LinkedIn. Are they pretty receptive to that, or is there a directory that you will be sharing with emails? What do you think works the best?
Yeah. So no, I don't publish their names and emails. If you go to a forum, that would be the best way to connect with them. You know, I get a lot of LinkedIn requests. I ignore most of them. I guess my mentors would be doing the same thing. So I don't suggest that as a way. You know, this is all about personal connections. And so I would take advantage of going to peer forums and meeting them that way and interacting. Make sense?
Yeah, so we just had Caleb. He was great about answering some questions. So is that really the only opportunity that I might have with him, other than the peer forum online? There wouldn't be an opportunity maybe to follow up with him after?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that, so I can ask him how he feels about it.
Okay.
If he wants to participate in that way. Are you in the class?
Yes.
Great. Okay, good. All right. Let me, send me a note and let me see what I can do. Send it to my email.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anyone else want to just chat?
I'd love to chat, but maybe after class. I have a question to ask you about an idea I have, if that would be all right.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we could do that.
Thank you.
Sure. So if you want to put in the chat your phone number, I guess that's how we chat after
Sure.
class. You were hoping to talk today, yes? Like now?
Well, I mean, whenever it works for you,
Okay.
I want to impose.
Okay, great. So, all right, send me your phone number, and I'll do that.
Did you receive this message?
I did. You're from Long Island.
Yeah, I am. I'm from Oceanside.
Okay, not Long Island.
Oh, it is Long Island. It's South Shore.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
There's a few ocean sides, I think.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I love area codes because get some sense of people's history. So, David, you're in class. You signed up?
I was in your last class. I have not signed up for this class yet. I dropped in because I had an email forwarded to me with the link. I hope that's all right.
Of course. Happy to have you here. You were in Startup 101? I knew you looked familiar.
Yeah, until February, and then in parallel, I was doing a project on SARS-CoV-2 before it was called SARS-CoV-2, and then I had to disappear from your class, and then ended up in one or two newspaper articles after that got published, and it turned into a giant thing with the whole team. And
oh wow!
I'm trying.
Who are you working with on COVID? Who are you working with on COVID?
Well, I'm a scientist with Nevin Krogan's group right now, and I'm trying to figure out what comes next. Okay.
All right. Cool. We can have the conversation. I see a question from Raphael. Is the UCSF IP resource available? No, you have to be UCSF to but you should definitely pay attention to the IP lecture when it's scheduled. And Neil says, aren't people keeping area codes from college and school days? You know, maybe a lot of people are. I was so happy to move from Boston to San Francisco. I was so excited to get a 415 area code. It was like, it was like my rite of passage. I really was here with a 415 and dumped my 617. So, but that's just me.
So I have a question, Stephanie. I attended your last session, the introductory session to this program, and it looks really exciting and interesting. I haven't yet signed up because I do have a company ongoing right now, and I have a couple of really interesting opportunities during the same time frame when this class will be running. And I'm really worried about the time. I personally don't like to sign up to programs where I don't invest the full energy into it. So when is your next session that's going to be running? Because I'm trying to figure out, I know this is the first time you're running this class, and I'm hoping that there will be again another one very soon.
Well, I hope too, Pretty, but there's no plan for it right now.
I see.
So, you know, this is sort of the opportunity. It's now or maybe never.
So this is a competition that I'm participating at MIT, and it's one of the ones where I have a professor from MIT, past PhD postdoc from MIT, who's helping me, mentor me, and it's taking up so much time working on it that I'm really struggling to see how I can fit in this class, and as much as I really want to be part of it.
So you're working on a venture with this MIT guy, or what do you do?
So yeah, he is actually my advisor now. So he's a professor of artificial intelligence and computer science. And I'm working, my startup is kind of work in that space where I'm building something for healthcare. And I did try to apologize. My mistake. I did try to connect with you on LinkedIn, and you did not accept.
Oh, that's okay. So, well, I just don't look at it very often. And then if I wasn't
sure what's the best mechanism to ask this question, so I just thought, okay, I'll send you an invite and see if I can ask you that question. But it's I got my answer, so thank you.
Yeah, good. Well, yeah, the way LinkedIn works for me, and I think for many people, is if I meet somebody, or if I meet somebody and establish some sort of relationship, and then they ask to link with me and send me a note, not just a click, and say, I met you at the Biopharm America conference, and we talked about X, and I'd like to link with you. That's one thing. I'll say yes.
Oh, I did send you an email.
Oh, you did? Okay.
A proper letter. Yeah.
Obviously, I haven't been on LinkedIn recently.
But it's okay. No worries.
The next, I have a question. Oh, so your question, I don't know what to advise you. Everything is recorded. You're just going to have to decide how much time you want to devote to this. If you decide to take it, there's no requirement to devote any amount of time. You can go back and look at all the stuff later on when you have more time. So, it's really a personal decision. But there's not another class scheduled. So, okay. Yeah, great. Okay, sure. Nita wants to know when's the next mentor meeting. Well, there isn't another mentor meeting. Sorry, this was private. Sorry, Nita, didn't read that. There isn't another mentor meeting. This is it. I wanted to give people a feel for the kinds of amazing people in my network here. And so the next opportunity to meet somebody is this Friday. It's an investor. He's not actually speaking in the class, and he's not a mentor, but he is someone that we know quite well, who has really good insights about investing from, I don't know how many years, 30 years of investing, let's say. So I definitely suggest, if you're interested in any of this entrepreneurship information, you're going to find Carl really super interesting.
Hi, Stephanie. It's Netta. It was my question. It wasn't meant to be private. I just wanted to make sure you saw it. I just didn't get a notification about it with the date and time.
That's because I haven't sent it out until tomorrow morning.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, that's what I needed to clarify.
Of course, yeah. So just put on your calendar 5 p.m. on Friday, Carl Handelsman, because that's what it'll be, and I'll get the link out to people.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have you signed up for are you going to be in the class, or you're not sure yet?
Yes, I signed up for it.
Oh, good. You're UCSF Health, I see in your background.
I'm a physician.
Excellent. What's your specialty?
It's called maternal fetal medicine. It's a division of obstetrics and gynecology.
Oh, great. Good. Have you ever had an entrepreneurship class before?
No, this is going to be my first entrepreneurship class. Most of the research that I've done is more from a clinical perspective, but I'm doing more research using medical devices, and I'm becoming more interested in creating my own.
Ah, excellent. So there's a group at UCSF called Surgical Innovations.
Okay.
And Hanmin Lee is on the clinical, you know Hanmin?
Yes, I've worked with him in Fetal Treatment Center.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So you might want to just check out what that group's all about.
What is it called? Surgical
Innovations. Yeah, and they're actually they're sending a number of people to this class, so there'll be some in the group, in the cohort as well. So
wonderful.
Good place to connect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for saying hello. And who else is on this? It's so nice. Everybody's still hanging in there. I love it.
Yep.
It's kind of boring being out here by myself. Okay. I don't know if anyone else would like to say hello. Jolie, Rachel, Catherine, any of you guys want to say hi to the group? It's only a small number of us now.
Please show up.
Guess not. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, then I think I'm going to say goodnight if there are no other questions, comments, discussions. My dog is now come and sitting next to me. He's like, you know, aren't we a couple of hours past when we take our walk at night? You know, what's going on here? He's got a little clock in him. All right. Okay. Well, I'm glad you guys could be there. Look forward to having you in class and seeing you at the next, at the investor meetup on Friday night, if you can do that. And I'll say goodnight. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you.